In his first cable interview since the election, Donald Trump threatened birthright citizenship. So I have a favor. Can we please retroactively deport my grandfather? Let's dive in, shall we? Hello and welcome to today's episode of the Nerd Avengers. It's great to have you all with me. Norm Morrissey, Brian Karam, Adam Parkamenko. It's great to see you guys. Adam, it's been a while. Hope everything is cool with all of you. Oh my goodness gracious. You know how, Norm, we sometimes like, wow, things have been really slow. Well, careful what you wish for, because it has been something of a news week, as they say. And I wanted to start with Donald's interview, not because we want to focus on him too much, but the things that he said in this interview were sort of this, again, the typical combination of ignorance, lying, bluster, gaslighting, and stupidity. But
nice way to put it.
Thank you so much. But we're looking at, I want to focus particularly on the birthright citizen issue and the January 6th, threatening to imprison the January 6th committee members first, because this isn't just him anymore, right? There's this whole mechanism in place by way of Project 2025, which Donald knew about the whole time. Good job getting punked again, corporate media. And I want to play this clip because we're also talking about how all of the lessons that haven't been learned and what we need to do going forward to make sure that, or I don't know, not make sure, because I don't know how much power we have, but to try to change the conversation and change the way we do things. So here's a clip about the 14th Amendment, Section 1 of the 14th Amendment.
Let me ask you about some of your other promises on this topic. You've promised to end birthright citizenship on day one. Is that still your plan?
Yeah, absolutely.
The 14th Amendment, though, says that, quote, all persons born in the United States are citizens. Can you get around the 14th Amendment with an executive action?
We're going to have to get a change. We'll maybe have to go back to the people. But we have to end it. We're the only country that has it.
Through an executive action?
We're the only country that has it. Do you know, if somebody sets a foot, just a foot, 1 foot, you don't need two, on our land, congratulations, you are now a citizen of the United States of America. Yes, we're going to end that because it's ridiculous.
Through executive action?
Well, if we can, through executive action. I was going to do it through executive action, but then we had to fix COVID first, to be honest with you. We have to end it.
Thanks for watching. Stay up.
Yes, we have to end it, Norm. Okay, so the thing I most want to focus on, besides the fact that my grandfather was an anchor baby, is that how do you preside over that big an interview and not be able to say automatically, that is not true. 30 countries have similar laws. How do you not say that you can't just get away with a constitutional amendment with an executive order? What's going on, Norm? Oh, you're muted. Hang on a sec. I don't know why you're muted.
Okay. Of course, it was journalistic malpractice.
Yes.
If you're going to ask a question about birthright citizenship, you need to do your homework and be prepared to call out the lies. But to just say by executive action without saying that is simply impossible and wrong, too bad. Now, on the other hand, if the trade-off is that Don Jr., Eric, Barron, and some of the others get deported because they have their citizenship taken away, we'd have to think about that. But what concerns me the most, Mary, is that I'm now seeing a host of others, the usually reliably awful Mike Lee, the federal appeals court judge, Supreme Court wannabe James Ho, and others offering caveats to this. It's one of those things that we know that Tim Snyder, Ruth Ben-Ghiat, and others say all the time about emerging autocracies. It is preemptive surrender. And I worry what the Supreme Court might do with this as well. The other part of that, though, was if you set 1 foot on the shore, what does that mean? 1 foot on the shore and then you deliver your baby into the ocean water? I mean, the insanity of this, the stupidity of this, and the evil of this is unparalleled.
And again, the complete failure of the interviewer to say, you don't have, what? You just don't put 1 foot on the shore. It's just, it is, again, a reminder of why we're here. And I think the theme, with the exception of the conversation we're going to have about Syria, the theme of this show is what Adam, what Norm just referred to, anticipatory obedience. Like this idea that, well, we lost, or what are we going to do about it anyway? So we're just going to go with any crazy thing. And if you're on the left, that is just abdication. If you're on the right, it's literally this idea that the Supreme Court's rigged. They're going to take care of it anyway and do whatever we want. So we're just going to pretend we have no power here. So Adam, I want to play the other clip from the same interview. And this one is about the January 6th committee, and also place it in the context of the potential pardons of the January 6th insurrectionists. So here we go.
And Cheney was behind it.
Well,
and so was Benny Thompson and everybody on that committee. For what they did, honestly, they should go to jail.
So you think Liz Cheney should go to jail?
For what they did.
Everyone on the committee, you think
I think everybody anybody that voted in favor.
Are you going to direct your FBI director and your attorney general to send them to jail?
No, not at all. I think that they'll have to look at that, but I'm not going to. I'm going to focus on drill, baby, drill.
Ooh, he's going to focus on drill, baby. Yes, no lines of communication are going to be open between him and Kash Patel and Pam Bondi, Adam. So again, first of all, let me just take a step back for a second and just remind us how horrified we should be that criminal got away with all of it and is now threatening people who were just doing their jobs as public servants with prison. Adam.
Yeah, I mean, to Norm's point, I think, and to yours, malpractice is, we talk about political malpractice in campaigns, but malpractice in reporting, I think it's why you're seeing a number of studies and polls coming out. Most Americans seem to be getting their news from sort of independent folks like us, although that sort of doesn't work in everyone's favor when it's Joe Rogan spewing lies. But look, if I were Joe Biden, just from a political standpoint, I would say, kind of like on Blue Sky, they've got these starter packs, right? I'd be asking my staff, give me a laundry list, right? Like, what's the platinum? What's the gold? I want it all encompassing. I want every single Democratic elected official up and down the ballot. And maybe those are more specific to, whatever. So that if someone actually did something unrelated to all of this, they're still held accountable, right? Because we are the party that holds people accountable. But at the same time, Joe Biden's got to go all out. I mean, we play by these imaginary rules that don't exist. We work within the law, but the law favors and gives him the ability to do all of this. And in that interview, it's like they asked, are you going to direct your FBI director? I mean, I don't think Kash Patel needs any direction even if he's only there for 200 days, on what he's going to be doing in those 200 days. It's a plan that they've been working on for years. So it's pretty terrifying. But I also think that they need to go outside of that. I think that, you know, the Mary Trumps of the world should be pardoned. And people can say all day long that, you know, oh, well, that's some type of, you know, admission of guilt. I would do the same with reporters, you know, with people like Brian, who we've already seen what they do the first term with their press passes, you know, to him and Jim Acosta and others.
Yeah. And Brian, good segue to you, because I think we're going to have a broader conversation about the Democrats later in the show, but specifically about this issue. And, you know, we could use the Hunter Biden pardon as a starting point for the broader idea of issuing pardons. Also, just sort of tactically, I wonder what you guys think, but like, why did he? I don't know. If I were him, I would have waited on the Hunter Biden pardon, unless it was because of the sentencing issue. Maybe that was why he did it first. But anyway, the point being, no matter what Biden does, he's going to get criticized. Why does he care? Why does he care? And I actually think that refusing to pardon people, we know specifically because Donald Trump and Kash Patel and people like them have said that they're going after these people, would have a negative, seriously negative impact on his legacy. So what's the holdup here, and what's the problem?
Good question. But the communications out of that White House have been horrible, and it's one of the reasons why the Democrats didn't win this past election, is the inability to communicate effectively. I want to go back a little bit to our problem in this. If you listen to that interview that you played, the first clip, Mary, he had to end COVID first. Well, that's a lie, because I stood out there when he said it was over with and nobody would even get sick. I asked the question. He lied then. He said there will be no deaths. The next day we had our first death. He mismanaged all of that. So the idea of having to end COVID first before he dealt with anything else, lie. Should have been called on it the moment he said it. This is not just, this is part and parcel.
And Brian, not to interrupt you, but just to your point, wasn't that first death the woman that he said was like feeble and old, and he basically blamed it on her? I think she was in Washington or Oregon.
No,
Washington.
it was the boat people, the people that came off the boat first. But regardless, then to talk about birthright citizenship, you're going to end that. Where is the pushback on that? This is part and parcel. It's not journalistic malfeasance. It's just a complete lack of journalism. It's lack
incompetence.
It's look, and I love Kirsten Welker. She's great. She was in the White House press pool. She tried her best to push back against Donald Trump when she was there. But I'm sorry, that's not the gravitas needed for that particular job. Escapes most of the people who are holding that job today. And the fact is, you don't have the people with 30 years of experience doing this job, nor do you have the support staff, the person in her ear, the producer going, all right, we just checked that fact. You need to say this. The fact of the matter is that we are paying less for the people that are there. We are expecting more from the people that are there, and they have less experience than people in the past to be there. It's a recipe for disaster. It continues to be disastrous, and it's not going to get any damn better. Then you talk about Joe Rogan. He's not news. I mean, we're basically, I love what we do here, but the idea of having, you know, a person who is a copy editor, who is looking at copy, that's pure reporting. That's not what's going on in the media world today, either in legacy corporate media or anywhere else. The fact of the matter is, facts are now up for debate. I get crap all the time from the rights going, you know what? The fact is that everybody loves Tulsi Gabbard. The fact is, no, nobody loves Tulsi Gabbard. The fact is Matt Gaetz is great, incredible. No, the fact is nobody likes Matt Gaetz. But you get two sides of the story without vetted facts, and then those people who stay in the Fox or the OAN news environment only hear, and they continue to hear, what Donald Trump pumps out, which is nothing but pure crap. And
right. Sorry, I think Norm wanted to jump in for a second, Brian.
Well, yeah. I'll finish real quick. But at the end, you're not going to get news unless you vet your facts, and that's not what we get today.
So what Trump has come up with, what Donald has come up with, is what I would call the flood ploy. It started the last campaign in 2015-16. He flooded the zone with so many scandals that they all washed over each other, and the press couldn't cover it or handle it. Each one would get one day and then go away. And if you don't focus relentlessly on them, they don't penetrate for the public. Now we're getting the flood of deplorables as nominees, where we know the Senate might reject one or two, or if you really stretched it, three, but all the rest of them are going to get in. The latest being Carrie Lake as ambassador to Mexico. And the third thing is, and this was a dilemma, which I would acknowledge for Kristen Welker, but it takes place across the board. If you tell lie after lie after lie, if, as Mary McCarthy said about Lillian Hellman, every word out of her mouth, including a and the, is a lie, and your job is to fact check, your entire interview is saying, that's a lie, that's a lie, that's a lie, that's a lie. We know even with what happened in this interview with Kristen Welker, Donald Trump said, you're asking these nasty questions, so they're not going to do it. And he knows that if you flood the zone with deplorables, with scandals, with lies, you get away with 98% of them, and the rest of them don't matter so much. And I don't know how we push back against that.
Then I do know. I can answer that. Here's how you, all right. So when he says, Norm, when he goes, when they step one foot on the shore, then you stop and you don't call them out for the lie. You go, explain exactly what you mean by that. And then you follow it up. The good journalist, the good reporter doesn't make accusations, but ask questions to expose the underlying truth. So when he said we had to end COVID first, well, how did you do that? Okay, well then how did you do that? You descend, you follow their rabbit hole and you call them on it by asking questions. And we're not good at it. We're not good at asking questions. We do not have the gravitas to do it, and we used to.
However, I mean, I think it's basically stopping him at the first lie, right? However you do that, you do not move on until either you uncover the lie or get him in a position to admit without knowing he's doing it that he doesn't know what he's talking about or is deeply ignorant. I said this yesterday that she read Section 1 of the 14th Amendment to him. That's probably the first time he's ever heard any part of the United States Constitution. But I want, okay, so
can I ask you a question, Mary, for you?
Sure.
Like, at some point, don't you think that this is on purpose, right? Like, we talk about the malpractice piece, but like, look, we don't go back to Jake Tapper and Dana Bash during the debate, right? There's been so many opportunities for the media to say, oh shit, look what CNN did, right? NBC, we're not going to let that happen. And here we are. And it's almost as if the media is looking at the numbers, looking at the votes, looking at where the country's at. And they want to be pulling that audience from the Joe Rogans of the world.
Right. But to answer that, the reason why is the government has destroyed independent journalism over the last 40 years. So what you have left.
Okay, but Brian, yes, absolutely. That is the context in which we're working. However, we're talking about on an individual basis as well. There are decisions being made on an individual basis that have nothing to do with the context necessarily. And to Adam's point, yes, I think that is part of the problem, that it is, as Brian has said many times, it's cultural, so that individual actors aren't even aware of the water in which they're swimming, and it's just become part and parcel of how they approach the whole idea of an interview with somebody like Donald. They want him to come back, right? So you can't piss him off too much, and you have to be very careful.
There's the access and money balance, because to some extent, like, some of it's tone deaf. If you look at the Washington Post, right, like they don't have a lot of Donald Trumpers that are paying for their membership, but to lose 250,000 plus,
right,
over what was clearly malpractice, but a decision made at the top, to me, it just doesn't make a lot of sense either, unless they're more worried. They're willing to lose that in exchange for, Donald Trump remembering that.
Yeah. So Walsh has just joined us, and we're basically we started off, Walsh, by talking about the disastrous Meet the Press interview. First of all, disastrous because of the things Donald said, and disastrous because of the way the interview by Kristen Welker was conducted. But I want to broaden that conversation. And we've talked about this before. Norm brought this up today, the whole concept of obeying in advance and how we're seeing it. Obviously, the corporate media had been doing this for a long time, but we're seeing it post-election in a way that I find really, really alarming, because it suggests to me, Waj, that nobody, including world leaders in the Western Alliance, Democrats, and others, have not learned who Donald is or how to deal with him. And it's pretty shocking. I want to play this clip because we learned yesterday, I believe, that Bernie Sanders is potentially going to support the confirmations of Robert Kennedy and Tulsi Gabbard, which in the wake of what just happened in Syria over the weekend is quite a kick in the head. But this is what he had to say about Bob Kennedy.
I've not talked to Mr. Kennedy in a number of years, actually. I think what he is saying about the food industry is exactly correct. I think you have a food industry concerned about their profits, could care less about the health of the American people. I think they have to be taken on. So we will see how the process unfolds. So I think what he's saying about the food industry makes sense to me. A lot of other things that he's saying are extremely dangerous.
Okay, so Waj, why focus on that one great thing he does and not talk about the dangers? Like, why soften the ground for an acceptance of that extraordinary? I don't think people can understand just how dangerous having Bob Kennedy at the head of health and human services would be to the health of our children and our planet.
Politics is downstream from power and from culture. And people realize, okay, this is what the American people wanted, a plurality. And after 9 years, I feel like, this is America. This is where it's going. So let me see what I can do and use power to my advantage for the betterment of the people or for my own personal gain. And you're seeing obedience in advance because I think people, especially the establishment and those institutions and those people who are the guardians of those institutions, realize, well, this is the game for the next 4 years. I'll scratch your back, you scratch my back. Let me see if I can get mine. And other people are saying, okay, especially foreign leaders and some other individuals, like, well, nothing that I do is going to matter. They have the votes for RFK, even though you just saw for the first time ever, like an entire platoon of Nobel laureates came out and signed a letter just yesterday warning about RFK as, there you go, dozen of Nobel Prize winners urge Senator to reject RFK. He lacks credentials in science and health. It's going to be, disastrous. And real quick, the reason why RFK is so dangerous in particular is his views are so nutty. He has no experience. He's anti-vax during a time where the World Health Organization has said that vaccine hesitancy is a top 10 global health. We're seeing a return of measles and the whooping cough and rubella and also bird flu in America. So what do you think is going to happen when RFK is in charge? And COVID hasn't gone away. So
and polio's been found in the groundwater in New York State.
Of course. So we're going to make measles and polio great again.
And iron lung as well.
It's I think it's one of those situations. If you saw that Meet the Press interview, it's like face-eating leopard renounces veganism, returns to eating faces again. And I think the American establishment and institutions, unlike us, have bent the knee and realized this is power. This is how power works. Republicans have the House. Republicans have the Senate. Republicans have the Supreme Court. Republicans have the media. Donald Trump is president. Let me protect myself. Let me get mine. And I think some people like Bernie and others are like, this is, the political reality of the next 4 years. Let me see if I can use these wrecking balls to maybe do something good for people. But the problem is, Mary, and look, this is that. Why did some people vote for Bernie and Donald? Why did some people vote for AOC and Donald? The reason is because they say the establishment isn't working for them, right? The institutions aren't working. So some people then say, you have to bring it all down, right? And if Donald Trump is the wrecking ball, so be it. But what people don't realize is when the institutions go down, they usually fall on the poor and the middle class. And the people wrecking it are in a crane who then, get to go to Mar-a-Lago. And so I personally think, and I agree with you, that this type of performative normalization of abnormal people for the sake of personal gain or for the sake of even reforming a corrupt system will only render more corruption, more cruelty, more disaster. And instead of Democrats having a type of spine that resists and does a full court press, because fascism needs a full court press, it's going to be up to the rest of us. Sorry for that rant, but
no. And Norm, you've been talking about this since the election. Where are the hearings in the Senate led by Democrats while they still have the majority? I just want to take a look at this slide. Jody Ernst, senator from Iowa, under MAGA pressure, signals backing for Hegseth's Pentagon bid. And Norm, I think one of the problems we're dealing with right now is that there is a vacuum being left by the silence of the Democrats. Where's President Biden? Where's Vice President Harris? Where's Chuck Schumer? Where is the pushback? Because basically, Jody Ernst, who was against Hegseth's nomination, she's been at the, as a Republican I should say as a veteran, has been at the forefront of sexual assault, of protecting women in the military against sexual assault, etc. And now, because she's got Hegseth and apparently Kash Patel and Donald in her ear, she's saying, "Look, what's the downside of voting for him? I only see downside if I vote against him."
The cult is strong in her, Mary, and following her meeting with Hegseth, she put up on Twitter a picture of her smiling together with Tulsi Gabbard. The idea that I've seen far too many people say that we have enough senators who will push back Republicans against some of this parade of horribles is, of course, nonsense. And as I've said before, we had this fandango in his first term with Lisa Murkowski and Susan Collins, where basically Mitch McConnell said to them, you can vote against these nominees if it won't make a difference. But when it does make a difference, cue Brett Kavanaugh, then Susan Collins, you can't do that. And that's what we're going to see this time. We'll see Collins and Murkowski vote against some of them, and maybe occasionally a third one, so long as it's then 50-50 and J.D. Vance casts the tie-breaking vote to get them in. So we've got that part of it to worry about. Now I'll go on my rant again against Chuck Schumer and Dick Durbin. There was a story in the Washington Post yesterday that a sizable number of nominees for courts in the District of Columbia, the D.C. Superior Court, the D.C. Court of Appeals. So these are important courts. There have been positions where there was a nominee for months, for more than a year, many of them entirely uncontroversial. They have never been brought up for a confirmation vote, and I don't see it now. And we know that we have a Senate in session this week, then they're going away, and maybe they come back for 1 week. We are going to have nominees to federal courts and to these other courts left on the table. We are going to have no hearings run by Democrats on Robert F. Kennedy and what I call the four horsemen of the apocalypse, which includes the nominees to the FDA and the NIH and the CDC, who will devastate the healthcare system in America. No hearing on what that would do. No hearing on Schedule F. No hearing on birthright citizenship. We know that when the Republicans do confirmation hearings, they will do them the way they did the Brett Kavanaugh hearing, which is to whitewash these nominees and keep Democrats from bringing in more than one witness who might point to where the problems are. And that with 2 months, from November 5th to January 3rd, the Senate has not been in session night and day to confirm nominees and hold these hearings, pre-confirmation hearings on these monsters and hearings on these disastrous policies that will follow. It is shameful, despicable, and dangerous.
Yeah, and for those of you who aren't familiar with Schedule F, which Norm referenced, that is basically just a very short version, would remove due process protections from civil servants so they could be fired without cause. And as we know, Adam, because they wrote it in Project 2025, their fascist manifesto, their plan is to remove a significant, like I don't know, 75% of the civil service and replace civil servants with loyalists to Donald, who will pledge a loyalty oath to Donald, not to the Constitution, not to the United States of America. And, you know, given the seriousness of what we're facing, Adam, I have to be honest with you. It's not just infuriating, the inaction of Democrats, the silence of the executive branch. I'm deeply confused by it. What is going on? And also, I want to make it clear, one of the reasons there are many reasons it matters, but one of the reasons it matters is because there have been a lot of people fighting very hard 24 hours a day for the last 9 years. And here we are at this very precarious time, and it feels like they're being abandoned.
Yeah, totally. So one point too on Joni Ernst is she's up in 2026 for re-election. So
yes,
I assume that not only did she know that, but people have reminded her of that, and that's an easy way to kind of shift her, especially in a state like Iowa. You know, for all those watching, I mean, and there's probably a lot that know far more than I do, but you know, civil service is one of these things in government where, you know, we all have one life, right? And people are dedicating their life to making this country a better place. Could there be some reforms on civil service jobs in terms of, I mean, there people can actually kind of do malpractice and do things wrong and wind up in a spot where they still have that job forever. I think that there's some fine tuning that can be done, but the idea that you could go in and do this, and you know, that the party of small government, you know, getting out of everything is actually just going to replace those numbers with their own sort of cult members is insanity. And to your question, and I'm watching the chat as we're all talking here, people are fucking furious, just as we are, in terms of what's going on in Washington. I mean, you got Charlie Kirk out there who's basically like, we must act right now. Chuck Schumer is about to do this one thing. And by the way, that one thing is just doing what Mitch McConnell does every single time we are at this point in history in December, you know, heading into January. Go back to Garland and others. It's insane. But and maybe we'll talk about this later, but I think in a parallel, you have two things. One, you have the inaction or the action by some Dems speaking out, but the inaction by leadership to get things done that need to get done right now. We should be working round the clock. And then there's the parallel when we lose the White House. We don't have a president who appoints the DNC chair. And so there's a race for the DNC chair. And the key here, and we've only had
I was gonna put in the private chat, ask you if you wanted to talk about the DNC
I was gonna try, but I think we're all on your link, so we can't chat with you. We're all Mary Trump today.
Are we?
Or at least I am.
But I just sent you something. Oh, there we go.
It signed me in as Mary.
I can chat with her.
I apologize.
No, you're good. I would prefer to be you any day. I just say this. I think that the key here for everyone watching is that when you have a race for DNC chair, and we can talk more about it later, is that it's actually been refined and kind of is in a better place now, where I think that they're talking about like 4 to 6 large public debates throughout the country. They hit the West, Northeast, South, and so on. And that's an opportunity for everyone to come in and actually stand up and ask questions of these individuals that are running. What are you going to do, right, to not sort of take everything that we've been building and put in the attic and let dust get on it and we take it out 4 years from now? How are we going to avoid another OFA? What are we going to do when we say we're going to pass the torch, but the torch doesn't really get passed to the people that are willing to fight and show up every single day? And one more point, just like, look, AOC would not be allowing this to happen right now. And I think that, when you look at some of these people who may have been viewed as, really over here or here, at the end of the day, when they got in and they really sort of got dug in their boots and got into their job, You know, we need people who want to be there and want to fucking fight these people and take them on. And I know we may have had the same number of judges as Trump in the quote unquote first term, but like it should be so much more than that. I mean, it's a no-brainer.
+1.
Yeah, it's. I don't think we can overstate how demoralizing it is when the fight is undermined by the people who are supposed to be leading it. And that would be the leadership of the Democratic Party. And excuse me, Brian, I mentioned this at the beginning of the show. Just in this bizarre place we find ourselves in which people from journalists to Democrats to world leaders, or I should say not all world leaders, dictators know exactly how to handle Donald Trump. Democratically elected leaders, with the exception of Orban, who's now basically a dictator, do not know how to deal with him at all. And there are two things that happened. Trudeau ran down to Mar-a-Lago to try to educate Donald about tariffs. And I'm like, if he doesn't know what they are now, either he never will, or he doesn't really care. And then he was invited to Notre Dame by Macron, which made me sick. And he used it as an opportunity to sell perfume. And this is how Trudeau got paid back. This is a truth, so-called, from Donald. It was a pleasure to have dinner the other night with Governor Justin Trudeau. I'm surprised he didn't call him Justine, I have to be honest, of the great state of Canada. I look forward to seeing the governor again soon so that maybe we may continue our in-depth talks on tariffs and trade, the results of which will be truly spectacular. And, you know, honestly, if Donald were capable of having a sense of humor, I'd say, oh, he's just kidding. But that's a flex.
Yeah,
and, you know, I just don't get it. Like, he's a bully. Waj has been saying, punch him in the nose, for God's sakes, for so long now. Probably not the last part. That was my editorial. Yeah. And here we are rolling out the red carpet, bring him into the fraternity. And why? I mean, let's just stick with the Democrats for 1 second. Can we not just be the party of opposition, please?
No,
the party of opposition and the party of information and facts.
Well, first of all, I'll discard the press and just tell you, if you want to see what I think of the press, reverse shot. We do it on Mary Trump Network once a week, so we'll address the press there. But to your point, look, you talked about something earlier, and I think you can't overstate this fact. It's individual responsibility. Who's going to punch someone in the nose who's a bully? Well, Adam Kinzinger said, "Bring it on." 3 words to Donald Trump.
Exactly.
Maybe he's the leader of the Democratic Party, but the problem I have with the Democratic Party, the problem I continue to have with it, is where has, all right, let me unpack it this way.
I thought Mary was about to put you backstage for a minute.
Hold on. Here's
I've got my finger on the button.
Let me unpack it this way. You mentioned people better than you, Adam, know about civil service. Well, where did civil service come from? It was the 1883 Pendleton Act that came in response to the assassination of James Garfield, because a partisan who was in office serving, which would be civil service, was kicked out because of partisanship, and it was the Republicans who passed it. The simple fact of the matter is we have forgotten our history, we have forgotten who we are, and there are no leaders on either side who will stand up. Again, 2 parties. One has no heart and one has no head. And the Democrats are horrible at communicating to the rest of us what they stand for. They talk down to us.
Brian, I think that your formulation is historically accurate. No heart, no head. I'm not getting the heart from the Democrats at this point.
Well, then they have no heart and no head. But
you're right.
Well, maybe you're right, Mary. But
no, you know what? No fight anyway. No fight. Like,
well,
what is the point of having a heart if you're just going to like?
Well, for this conversation, can I just throw one thing out there?
Sure.
I'll wait till you, Brian, finish up.
Okay. Well, I mean, to follow it up, to tie it all up, at the end of the day, we get who we want, and we elect them, right? So maybe George Carlin was right. maybe George Carlin was right. Garbage in, garbage out. You want better representatives? Well, take the money out of it. I'm talking big picture. But at the end of the day, today, if you want better representation, you've got to demand it from those people who represent you. And I tell you, as God's honest truth from covering Congress for 40 years, that phone in their office, to them, they listen to. So call them. If you want direct action, take direct action. And they will listen, because they are not leaders, they are followers. And at the end of the day, I find, that thing with that idiot who sat up there and said Robert Kennedy is right about one thing. Yeah. I'm sorry. At the end of the day, that's just you signaling that that's what the issue that you want covered. It's not standing up for the American people, and that's what's lacking, and we've got to force them to do it.
Yeah, Adam, Norm has a comment about the DNC that first.
You go to Norm first.
Yeah.
So Martin O'Malley was a student of mine as an undergraduate. Ken Martin is the chair of the Democratic Party in my native Minnesota. I've known Ben Wickler since he was working for my friend Al Franken. I'm for Wickler. I think Ben has done an amazing job in Wisconsin. But two, when we go through these forums, but also when we ask and look at strategy, we know that all of those working class people and farmers who voted for Donald Trump because they thought grocery prices were too high, or because they thought the elites had screwed up the country, so let's blow it all up.
Whoopsie.
Very soon, before long, after January 20th, they're going to be saying, oh my God, that's not what I voted for. The problem we have is that this will be sanitized by the Republican wind machine into blaming Democrats or blaming the other elites. And we need a DNC chair who has a strategy that isn't just saying to people, you're so goddamn stupid that you voted for this horrible person, but to reach out to them. We need a communications network that rivals what's been there. And it has to start with the DNC that can reach out to farmers when they see what tariffs are doing for them, what's happening to the environment under them. When we see working class people who are having all of the safety net protections that they've taken for granted undercut, when inflation goes up and food prices go up because of these policies, when the dollar gets destroyed because of this cryptocurrency scam that is being perpetrated by these billionaires, where they're going to take gold out of Fort Knox to buy Bitcoin so that they can profit from it before the collapse. We have to be able to say to people, look, this was a big mistake, but here's how we can fix it so that, God willing, we have elections in the midterms and in 2028. We're going to be able to see that rebound. That's what we have to ask of these candidates for the DNC.
Yeah, and Adam, to Norm's point, we're also in this situation where the most powerful thing we can do right now is, I think it's a little late to preempt anything, but to create this infrastructure so that we can combat the misinformation, the disinformation, because as Norm said, when things go south, the Republicans already have a way to blame us and Biden and Harris and the minority party. So we need to be ready for that.
Yeah, I mean, I think so. Like, there's two pieces here. One, and this was sort of a different conversation we're having, but it goes into this. You know, a couple of weeks ago, Waj said we were talking about Trumpism, Donald Trumpism, and whether it was here to stay. And he talked about, Springsteen and the long walk home. And I think that applies to what we're about to see with the Democrats for the next 4 years. Because when we lose the White House, we wind up in a situation where we have these elections at the DNC. And they don't take place otherwise, because if we win the White House, the president-elect appoints that leadership. But we also do not have a Speaker of the House. We do not have a majority leader next year, and we don't have the White House. So there's basically nobody in charge. One thing I will just flag for those that are watching that are interested in, you talked about Ken, and Ben and Martin and others that want to be involved and actually affect the vote, the best thing to do is, there will be these forums announced that Norm mentioned, but there's 447 DNC members. Those are the ones that get to vote. If a member of Congress happens to have run locally and become one, but this is not like super delegates with the presidential race. There's 447 DNC members. There's 57 state parties. That's the states, the Dems abroad, Guam, and so on. And Ken Martin happens to be vice chair and also president of the Association of State Democratic Party Chairs. So you've got 57 chairs, 57 vice chairs, of which Ben is also a chair. That coalition is the largest voting bloc. So Ben and Ken have a large group that are very familiar with them. It's a quarter of the DNC. But what you can do is you can go and you can urge your DNC member to support the candidate that you want. And just like we talked about members of Congress hearing, when Brian said they get those calls and so forth, you have a DNC member. You may not know who that person is, and there will be elections for DNC seats as well. But if you want to have an impact on the DNC chair race and where this party goes, your best bet is going to be to get in touch with your DNC member and urge them to support the individual or find out where they're at on that topic.
Yeah, and Watch, it does seem like that's what we need. It almost feels like we need to just start from scratch, both in terms of independent media and the Democratic Party. And it just, I don't know, again, it feels like a lot after 9 years of having fought and lost and not having the people in charge anywhere to help us pick up the pieces and move forward in a productive way that is going to make a difference.
Can I give 2 examples that might seem strange? What we're witnessing in Syria right now is remarkable. Syrian people.
Yeah, we will be getting to that. I don't mean to give it short shrift, but there's a reason. So anyway, go ahead.
But I'm just saying, we'll get to it, I'm sure. But like the Syrian people have undergone so much in the past 14 years. Bashar al-Assad was a dictator, brutal ruler. I mean, we're discovering prison. We're discovering multi-level underground prisons where they're finding thousands of people. There are individuals right now who thought their family members were dead, who are literally crawling from the ground up, right? And within a blink of an eye, based on what's been happening in the Middle East, you're seeing Assad now in Russia. Who would have thought? If you would have told Syrians last month this would have happened, right? Now, we don't know what's going to happen in the future of Syria. We hope it doesn't follow in the footsteps of, say, what Yemen and Iraq has happened. But things don't last, folks. And that's what I've learned in my life. I'm 44 years old. I remember taking it domestically. One of the biggest crises that I saw in my generation was 9/11. This country lost its mind after 9/11. People forget. We banned French fries. We used to call them freedom fries. They banned, I'm not making this up for the young bucks watching.
Yes, be clear. It was Republicans.
Yes, Republicans.
In the Capitol cafeteria.
Yeah, yep. and Clear Channel banned Rage Against the Machine's catalog from being played. They banned John Lennon's Imagine because we weren't in a peaceful mood. Rudy Giuliani was seen as a hero, the mayor of America on the cover of Time magazine. All right, now look at Rudy Giuliani. I say
by
this
the way,
because
he was that guy then.
He was always that guy. He was always a piece of shit, right?
Exactly.
So, and George W. Bush won in 2000, barely, maybe, we don't know, because the Supreme Court gave it to him. And then in 2004. And then 2004, America's, you know what? Let's vote for this guy again because we're in a very pro-war mood. And then around 2006, 2007, the chickens came home to roost, right? Economic crisis. Why? Because Republicans always F up the economy. One of the worst recessions that we have witnessed in our lifetime, in my lifetime. Housing crisis, Katrina disaster, American soldiers coming home in body bags, people realizing there was no weapons of mass destruction in mobile laboratories. And then America was like, you know what? Let's vote for this black Muslim named Hussein. He's not a Muslim, just dark humor. And in my lifetime, folks, I never thought, I'm being honest with you. If you told me in 2004, 2005, that in my lifetime, America would ever elect a black man named Barack Hussein Obama, I remember I used to tell my friends, it'll probably happen in my kids' generation, but it happened. And then after Barack Obama, because this is America, 2 steps forward, 1 step back, white rage always chokeholds us back. It is not shocking at all if you're a student of American history that the country barely elected the same racist who promoted the birther conspiracy against our first black president. So what I'm trying to tell people, and I'm not giving false hope, is just being a pragmatist. realizing that Kamala Harris lost by 1.5 percentage points, realizing that the deck was stacked against her, realizing that Donald only got 49%, never crossed 50, and knowing that they will F up, to echo what Norm said, because they will F up. They will F up not in 4 years, they're going to F up in 6 months. Once these tariffs go in, you're already seeing anticipatory rise in prices due to fear of these tariffs, right? So he's going to implement these policies. Democrats are going to bend the knee. And what we have is an opportunity. I know people might not like this. And this opportunity is for people like you, people like us, to change the system. The Avengers aren't going to come. It's going to take a grassroots movement. Leaders will emerge. And I believe that for the Democratic Party, whoever emerges as the fighter, Mary, to echo what Adam was saying, whoever emerges as the fighter will be rewarded by the people in the next year to 2 years. And in local, run for office, run for your city council, run for school boards, right? You're seeing a shift for better and for worse. You're seeing a change. And it's scary when the ground shifts underneath you, right? Because you want these institutions to help you. You want Superman and the Justice League or the Avengers to come. But like we already talked about in the first 40 minutes of the show, they ain't doing it. So it's going to be a period of tumult, a period of turbulence, a period of uncertainty. But I want to remind people that this dude only won by 1.5 percentage points, and disinformation and lies. And because for the first time in 140 years, nearly every incumbent lost, he's deeply unpopular. He's going to F up. The fighters and the leaders have to emerge from the ground up. And I believe that long walk, it's going to be a long walk, but it might not be 30, 40 years, folks. It might be a 4-year, 6-year, 8-year commitment. Who is willing to go on that long walk?
I know the only ones coming are the Nerd Avengers.
Exactly. And hopefully not only us, but there are a lot of people fighting out there. A lot of people are tired. And I guess my point is that it's very frustrating when I said this right after the election. The only good thing that came out of the election was this clarity. I had this sense of clarity for the first time in a very, very long time. And it feels like at least one hand is being tied behind our backs by our very own party. So, Norm, as Waj pointed out, there was a massive shift in power in Syria. I want to play this clip. And then the reason I don't want to go into too much is, one, it is so complicated. It is such a complicated situation. It's going to be playing out for a very, very long time. And I think it's going to take a while to know who's filling the vacuum in leadership in Syria, how other players in the region, especially Iran, are going to be affected. I want to first of all, celebrate the fact that this murderous, totalitarian dictator whose regime has been in place for 50 years and who himself, I'm talking about Bashar al-Assad, has been in power for 14 years, devastated his country, devastated the people in his country. It is nothing but good news that he is gone. It is terrible news that he found asylum in Russia, but let's talk about that on the other side.
Tonight, scenes of triumph across Syria as rebel forces celebrate their stunning victory over the Assad regime. More than 50 years of dictatorship by one family ended in a 2-week lightning advance by rebel fighters. Tonight, those fighters shooting open the doors of regime prisons, freeing political prisoners, including women and children, while the marble halls of a tyrant's palace echo with the cries of ordinary people. But Syria's ousted president Bashar al-Assad evading capture, fleeing to Moscow with his family, according to Russian state media.
Okay, finding asylum thanks to Vladimir Putin. So the obviously, Norm, say whatever you want to say about this extremely complex situation that's unfolding. I just want to remind people that there are a lot of really cruel people in the United States saying things like, I think it's time to send the Syrian refugees back to Syria. Okay, sure. Anyway, because that's America. But in the context of the complexity of the Middle East situation, which has just become infinitely more complex, Norm, how is Tulsi Gabbard even in this conversation?
So true. One comment to start with, probably more than 30 years ago, I was a Fulbright lecturer, and I went to the Philippines, and I went to the museum that showed the Marcos's grift. And there were like five gallon containers of Chanel number 5. There were, of course, there was an auditorium filled with her shoes, another one filled with his ridiculous sweaters. And we've seen this picture now of a garage with hundreds of Ferraris and Lamborghinis and other cars that were Assad's. And I bring that up because that struck me in another way as well. Dictators grift. They use this process to take money and everything else from their own people to build huge fortunes, often doing stuff that have nothing to do with what they might use. Imelda Marcos was not going to use a 5-gallon container of Chanel number 5 that probably cost $100,000. And so as we watch the Trump grift emerge and all these billionaires, we're seeing this story of Elon Musk, spending $280 million to elect Donald Trump. Well, what an investment, because he's already made $60 billion more just by having him elected. And now he's looking to do even better than that. So we've got that. The second part of it, though, is Tulsi Gabbard must be very nervous right now, because we are going to see uncovered in Syria who was on the payroll, who had communications with Bashar al-Assad, and what those communications said. And my guess is we're going to find some awfully damaging stuff. And I will bet you that these rebels who have taken over are going to be very happy to get that out and to show who was complicit with Assad. But the other thing is that, following on what Waj said, we're seeing a completely remade Middle East right now. And the tragedy is that we are not going to be playing a constructive role in recasting it in a way that might be positive. One that could turn this into something more positive after the horrors of the Hamas invasion, the follow-on by Israel, all of the things, the huge numbers of people who have been devastated by all of this, that maybe at least out of those ashes, something good could come of it. And we're going to have an American foreign policy that's likely to fuck it up even worse.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it is, I felt this way before. I mean, when COVID hit, it's like the worst person. You could not create a worse person in a laboratory than Donald Trump to be in charge during that period of time. That's how I'm feeling right now. Brian, I know you have something to say on here, Syria, but quick. Sorry, we're running late. We will continue the Syria conversation, obviously. So, Brian.
Oh, wait a minute.
You said your hand was raised on Syria, and I said you're next.
Well, I was just going to say that the biggest take that you can take away from Syria right now is that Russia is weakened. The war in Ukraine has helped weaken it. They're going to have to put people in. Their influence in Syria isn't over with, but it's certainly compromised. And Norm, you're right. We got to worry about screwing it up even worse. My cousins who live in Damascus are not happy right now. They're kind of scared that it's going to end up like they keep saying, are we going to end up like Libya? So at the end of the day, the biggest problem that we have, this is a big gift from Joe Biden to Donald Trump. Moving forward, it gives him leverage in the Middle East and gives him leverage in Ukraine. Now, how he screws that up, well, that's up to anybody's guess, since he's bowing down to Putin already. So at the end of the day, what we have to do, Norm, you're absolutely right over there. And everyone, they keep saying 6 months. I know why she said 6 months. Watch the first 100 days of the Donald Trump administration. That's going to be that will tell you exactly where we're going. Those first 100 days. And it's frightening in its scope. And the Syrian thing is frightening.
In the first 200 days of the FBI.
And
right.
Yeah, well, that's first 100 days of the Trump administration.
I mean, honestly, I'd say first day. Watch the first day. Watch the executive order get signed at 12:01 p.m. on January 20th, 25. Wait, sorry, Brian, we got to go because we're running out of time. But trust me, we will continue this conversation because doesn't look like anything's changing except in the Democratic Party and the Democratic Party's approach to this. And I think it's really important for everybody to keep in mind, Donald Trump has no ideology. His only agenda is accruing wealth, more wealth, and revenge. The people he's appointing, generally speaking, not all of them. Well, let's put it this way. They all have agendas which are terrible for America and the American people. And some of them are very ideological. And it's going to be a very rough ride, especially if the Democratic Party doesn't stand up and do something while it still can. It's not looking good, sands through the hourglass and all that. But obviously, we're going to continue to fight here. We're going to continue to do whatever we can, which includes, of course, keeping all of you informed. Thank you so much for being here with us. Thanks to all of our peeps coming over from Twitter to join us. Please don't forget to subscribe to the channel. It doesn't cost anything. Like and share our videos. We're trying to gain some momentum here in the lead up to what will be one of the worst. No, why am I qualifying it? The worst administration in the United States history. So, we've got a lot of work to do. Thanks to our awesome moderators. And of course, Waj Ali, Adam Parkamenko, Brian Karam, Norm Ornstein. Thank you so much for spending time with us today. And we will see you Thursday, 12 noon p.m. Eastern, live. In the meantime, please, everybody, stay safe and be very, very kind. I'll see you soon. Bye.